What if I told you there were 3 secrets to having a happy, peaceful life? That's what we're talking about today on the Dr. Susan Show in part 2 of having a happy, peaceful life. Hi, I'm Dr. Susan, and welcome to the Dr. Susan Show, where we talk about body, mind, and connection. And that means both the connection between our mind and our body, and the connection between ourselves and others, or with our higher power. So just to get present together, I would invite you just to take a deep breath with me if you can, and just feel yourself centered wherever you're sitting, if you are sitting. And just a deep breath, just to be present together while we talk about this really exciting topic, which is how to be happy and peaceful. So in part 1 of the series, we talked about impermanence, which is understanding that everything changes and that everything's in a constant process of falling apart and coming back together. And really having a deep insight or understanding into that fact brings a lot of peace and harmony into our lives. So you can listen to that one first, or you can listen to this one on its own, because all 3 of these concepts are equally important. So we talked about impermanence already, and then the second one I'd like to talk to you about is that life is inherently imperfect. So one of the old translations from Buddhism, which is where these ideas originated, is that life involves suffering. And so a lot of people have the idea that this is a very dismal or pessimistic thought. But actually understanding that life involves suffering or is imperfect brings an enormous amount of freedom and joy. And let me explain how that works. I spent most of my life, and honestly still do spend a lot of my life, thinking that if things are not going exactly right, then I must be doing something wrong. If I did everything the right way, then things would be perfect. It's kind of delusional to think that way, isn't it? But I think we all do that sometimes. Now, as I've become older and understood that life just has some shit in it, let's face it. You know, the old bumper sticker, shit happens, that was a brilliant idea developed in the 70s that actually came from this Eastern tradition. Shit happens, and it's not your fault. So understanding that things that we don't want happen, and things that we do want go away faster than we sometimes want to, puts us in a position where we can kind of be right in the middle between this push and pull of wanting to push things away that we don't like, or pull things towards us and cling on to them that we want to keep, when none of that is possible. So sitting in the middle, which to me feels like what I'm doing right now, one description of that is a word that I don't use very much, but equanimity, just sitting in the middle, which I think of as sort of being in the center of a pendulum, and observing the desire to pull things towards me that I want or push things away from me that I don't want, really allows me to have some peace and balance. So coming back to the idea that life is inherently imperfect, yeah, stuff's going to happen. Being born is really hard. I delivered thousands of babies, and they come out screaming. So the very first introduction to the world is a bunch of suffering. They stick needles in your feet. They shine bright lights in your eyes. It's entirely unpleasant. So understanding that from birth on, there's going to be unpleasant things come our way, and that it's not your fault, really brings a lot of peace and harmony. At least it did to me. So yes, life has suffering in it. Life has sickness. Life has pain. I stubbed my toe. The stock market went down. The dog threw up on my favorite blanket. These are things that happen every day. And when I catch myself saying, oh, if I had done that better, that wouldn't have happened. If only, you know, the if onlys. If only I had not put that blanket there, the dog wouldn't have threw up. You know, if only, it's a waste of time and energy. And I think that if you're like me, you probably spend a great deal of your energy fighting against this reality that life has suffering in it. Now, that doesn't mean that we want to be a doormat and just sit down and accept all of the suffering that comes our way. Of course not. I'm in a profession where I'm committed to end suffering where I see it. I'm a doctor. So, obviously we want to reduce pain and suffering when we can, but there's certain elements of life that we just can't change, like getting older, or the weather, or the traffic. Those are some of my favorites, personally. So understanding what we can control and focusing our energy on that. Again, that's not a new idea, but it's an idea that we frequently forget, or at least I do. Understanding what we can control, focusing on that, and then accepting the rest is really important if you want to achieve some peace in this life. So acceptance, like I said, doesn't mean being a doormat. We're not laying down and just letting people treat us badly. Not at all. But from a position of acceptance that, say, for example, you got a cancer diagnosis. I'm just thinking of some of the worst things that can happen to us. Say I got a cancer diagnosis. That doesn't mean that, oh, life has suffering in it, I'm going to just die now and not get treatment. Not at all. But accepting that I have cancer, which I don't, by the way, right now, but hypothetically accepting that I have cancer and moving from a position of acceptance, saying, yeah, life has suffering in it. Life is imperfect. So getting cancer is not entirely unexpected. It happens to a lot of people. From that position, now, what do I do about it? What I'm accepting is my emotions and that this is happening, rather than fighting it off and spending all my energy on saying, this shouldn't have happened. Why did this happen? I'm a good person. Why did God do this to me? And all that voice that thinks that everything should be perfect. I hear this quite frequently in my office. Why did I get breast cancer, Dr. Hardwick-Smith? I've been a good person. I ate really well. I go to church. We all know that's not how it works. Good things happen to, well, I don't think there are bad people, but as the saying goes, good things happen to bad people, and vice versa. The universe is happening. It's not happening to me, and it's not happening to you. It's just happening. So if we can sit in that space with some acceptance of the fact that things don't always go the way we want, and that makes things a lot easier. Now, a very common response to that, and I can tell you my response to first hearing this idea was, well, wait a minute, that's just going to make me into a doormat or like a wet noodle who doesn't do anything. But I'm thinking of some of the most evolved and most spiritually aware people in recorded history, like Jesus or the Buddha or Martin Luther King or Gandhi. They were activists. All of these characters are, we throw in a woman, Mother Teresa. There's lots of them, and lots of modern day people who would fit that description. They're not doormats at all. Nelson Mandela was not a doormat. He was in jail for 30 years and came out and became the president. Acceptance does not mean that we turn into a doormat. We can be activists, but from a position of acceptance that, yeah, this is what happens. Life is not perfect. Life comes with suffering. What do I do about that? I try to end suffering where I can, but there's certain things that I just accept. And accepting is really another very good description for peace to me, and I think most of us want peace. So what I invite you to do today is just consider what your teaching, what your learning has been throughout your life about this fact, and I am going to call it a fact, that life is imperfect. Life inherently comes with things we don't want, things that we do want go away. How that feels to you and how you've been raised, and just maybe shifting from a position of always wanting things to be different and fighting against things that happen that you don't want, to just sitting back and saying, okay, this is life. I'm in it. Something I don't want happened. I'm going to accept that, and then I'm going to move forward with wise action. My kid broke his leg. Didn't want that to happen. My wise action is I'm going to take him to the hospital. However, I'm going to do that from a position of acceptance rather than, why did this happen? Whose fault was it? They should have built a better playground. I'm going to sue somebody, going immediately into blame. Whole lot of wasted energy and not a lot of peace. So if we're into peace and happiness, which is why we're here, I think that's a really good idea. So check that out this week. See where that comes up for you. And I'd love to connect with you and hear your ideas. You can connect with me on drsusan.com or at the office, completewomenscarecenter.com. See you next week.